Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. We are back with yet another discussion with Return of the King. Phil, of course, is here with me, and of course, he is here in the chat spamming a bunch of emojis. However, we do unfortunately have to begin on a bit of a sad, somber note because we recently had a unfortunate passing amongst the fandom of the Lord of the Rings community because Mr. Bernard Hill, the actor who played King Theoden, unfortunately passed away on Sunday. So I'm going to really quick just bring up his IMDb page here and we'll learn a little bit more about him. So, says here, he is well recognized for playing King Theoden in the Lord of the Rings film trilogy, Captain Edward Smith in Titanic, and Luther Plunkett, the warden of San Quentin Prison in the Clint Eastwood film True Crime. He was also known for playing roles in television dramas including Yasser Hughes, the troubled hard man whose life is falling apart in Alan Bleasdale's groundbreaking Boys from the Black Stuff in the 1980s, and more recently, as the Duke of Norfolk in the BBC adaptation of Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. Now, what he ultimately passed away from, unfortunately, I don't know. But he's been, of course, he was in Lord of the Rings, he was in Titanic, and let's just take a quick look at... Oh, he was even in Scorpion King. I didn't know that. I wonder who he played in that. He played the character Phylos. I don't remember who that is though. Okay, I won't say that here, but let's see if it says what his awards were, if he won anything. Okay, I am not seeing... Oh, he was nominated for 2 BAFTA awards. Let's see what this says here. He won the Critics' Choice Award, of course, Best Acting Ensemble for Return of the King. I'm not going to read all of these, but these were just a list of his different accolades across his career here. And as far as tonight for Lord of the Rings, I've said it before. I said it especially in the beginning when we were talking about Fellowship, but this entire cast was just perfectly well casted. There's not a single character that had an actor cast for them that could have not done a better job. Everyone was just perfect. Everyone blended into the role so well. And of course, Mr. Bernard Hill as Theoden was no exception. He played the role perfectly of a somewhat aged king that was very troubled, of course, with ruling during a very turbulent time, not just in his kingdom, but in Middle-earth in general. And from what little bit I've seen of him in Titanic, it's been forever since I've seen that movie, but I remember seeing this one clip somewhat recently of him walking onto the bridge of the Titanic, and he's holding the wheel, and the Titanic's already sinking at this point, but he's like looking at the bridge, looking at the wheel, I guess thinking to himself, Captain always goes down with the ship. And so I always say this anytime a famous actor passes away, the best way to celebrate their life is go back and look at their work, go back and look at everything that they did, and appreciate what he did manage to give us throughout his career. Phil, is there anything you'd like to say on the topic?
Oh, my first experience with Bernard Hill was I, Claudius. And you have to be old time schooled to know what I, Claudius and how huge that was. His role wasn't big. He had a small part in that miniseries, but it was a good start for him. Uh, I think he's one of them actors, much like Ian McKellen, that as they age, they became more popular. When they were in their youth and their prime, I'm not saying they weren't popular, but they weren't as big as you would say now.
Hmm.
You know? So, but yeah, I thought he did excellent in Titanic. I thought he did excellent in Lord of the Rings. Overall, good actor. He did. But I remember he did stage. Plays and stuff like that too.
I could believe
So
that.
you know, and even a lot of them British actors, they all do that. So I just feel bad that he passed away, but hopefully he lived a good life and he's in a better place now. So
I absolutely agree. And of course, our condolences absolutely go out to those that are surviving in his family. So, having said all of that, getting back onto where we're going to be starting. So, I might have said last time on stream that we were going to be talking about the Battle of the Pelennor Fields on this stream. I was way off with that guess because I didn't account for how much this particular block was, number one, going to focus on the Paths of the Dead with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And number two, that it was going to focus so much on everything to do with Shelob. So that's the sort of stuff we're going to be getting into this time. But we're going to start right after Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli enter the doorway to the Paths of the Dead, and all of the Rohirrim, of course, led by Theoden and Eomer, are gathering up their forces to ride out the next morning. And Merry is there in his full kit, and Theoden basically says, "This isn't for you. You need to go home." And Merry's like, "No, everyone else." Oh, excuse me. Everyone else of my friends are at war. I need to be there too. And at first it looks like he's going to get left behind, but then suddenly he gets picked up by Eowyn, who has disguised herself as a man. Now, here's one instance I know is different from the book. At first, Eowyn does not let on that she is, of course, Eowyn. She goes under a different name. I don't remember what that name was. And Merry falls for it. He doesn't figure out that it's Eowyn until later on when she literally unmasks herself. Is that correct?
pretty much, yes.
So why do you think they changed that?
Oh, Peter Jackson changed a lot, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess to give the audience something about her, to identify her. You got to remember, it's now in the way they did it. It isn't the audience left in the dark. It's the characters that they're riding around that are left in the dark. Now in this setting, Merry, and is it Merry or Pippin? I forgot.
Merry.
Merry. Merry says in the movie, he goes, when he realized that she picks him up and puts him on the horse and says, ride with her, he knows right away who it is.
Right.
So, and we as the audience knows. But as far as Theoden or his brother and the people riding around them, they don't have a clue. And really, really, at this point, they ain't got time to stop and ask questions.
Yeah, because they know that the battle has already started by this point.
Originally, Theoden was hoping to have 12,000, but he couldn't wait. So were there more Rohirrim coming? Yes, more definitely. But he can't wait. He's got to get there. So it doesn't matter if he has 6,000, which he says that's what he has, or if he had the 12,000 that he was hoping for. He's got to take what he got and get there. Again, if Gondor falls and he arrives late, 6,000, 12,000, it ain't going to make a difference. So, his thing is they got to leave that right now, and they had to ride nonstop. So, I think that was the main reason why he didn't want Mary to go, because if he had to give somebody a rider to ride with him and to carry him, first of all, the horse is going to get worn. The rider himself is going to get worn. So give it to her that she was able to, carry him, and the horse was able to carry both of them. That in itself is a miracle. Okay. I don't know if you ever rode horses, Paul, but it takes a lot for a horse to carry a person, for a long period of time.
Not to mention just the person, but in this setting, the person's armor, and oftentimes the horse's armor itself. In fact, I know for a fact that in real life in the world, there were certain breeds of horses like Percherons and Clydesdales that were specifically bred for war, to be able to carry the man's armor and the horse's armor, and be able to go into battle like that.
Yep. And then you have some people, their horses are fast and quick, like the Arabian horses, which even though they also had armor, they weren't bred for carrying a person in armor. Now, we should be clear when we say armor. We're not talking armor like a knight. Even if they're generic helmet, a chainmail, or even ringmail, or even leather armor, that's a lot of weight. Even if it's just leather armor, that is a lot of weight. Again, if we were to make it realistic, I wouldn't be surprised that they rode for maybe 2 or 3 hours break. Rode for 3 hours break.
I mean, we do see a scene of that later on in this very movie.
Yeah, you see them, and then they take a break, and then they're like, "Hurry up, get back on your horse." And
also, that's a lot to DJ Ronnie G.
That is a lot of wear and tear on a horse. Like I said, even if it's a horse designed to carry a knight, I should say a European knight in full armor. That's almost a armor designed. You're thinking the King Arthur legend, heavy armor. That would been almost impossible to do.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure doing that, did indeed shorten the lifespan of the horse, assuming they survived all the battles. I'm sure putting that much wear and tear on the horse ultimately was detrimental to their health and potentially caused them to shorten their lifespan. Any horse experts out there that would be knowledgeable about that sort of thing, let me know in the chat. But anyways,
DJ Ronnie G, nerd.
That is true. Imagine I just had a funny thought for DJ Ronnie G. Imagine if instead of the Rohirrim riding horses, they rode giant war turtles.
Don't give him any ideas.
I know. But anyways, we now shift the focus to Minas Tirith, and we see the full force of the armies of Mordor marching right up to the gates. But as the armies are marching, the city opens the gates, and in comes Faramir, literally being dragged by his horse, having been shot down. And he's literally on death's door. In fact, even his horse has a couple arrows sticking out of him. But Faramir is brought, of course, to the summit where Denethor is, and Denethor is beside himself with grief over the fact that his son got killed. Or did he? Because Pippin goes up to him and notices that he's still alive. But Denethor is too stricken with grief, and I think you could probably agree with me on this one, Phil. This is when Denethor's last little bit of sanity snaps, right?
Well, he thinks that his last son is dead, even though he did not have a good relationship with him. So I guess he feels his line is over, his life is over. What's the point? All right. So he's not going to be reasonable, when someone tells him, "Oh, look, your son's still alive." He's determined it's the end. So nobody can say, do, or anything like that is going to change his mind.
Yeah. So basically, while he's in his grief state, Denethor goes to the edge of the wall and sees the full force of Sauron's army down there below him, and he really starts going crazy, saying things like, Rohan's not coming, Theoden's betrayed me, and he starts telling his men to abandon their posts, only for him to turn around and get whacked in the head by Gandalf.
Flee for your lives.
One of the most unintentionally funny things about these movies. Like, obviously, he's grief-stricken, he's despaired, he's lost all hope. He's like, okay, screw it, we're not even going to put up a fight. And then Gandalf just comes in and thwack. Does he do that in the book?
No.
Okay.
Though he does confront him, he don't whack him with the staff.
Yeah. But yeah,
but
Gandalf...
he does confront him. So that part is true to the book. But as far as that little added little bonus there, yeah. No, that wasn't in the book.
So, Gandalf basically gets all the soldiers back up. He does his absolute best to get their fighting spirits back up. But of course, while all of this is going on, while Denethor is losing his marbles, the orcs are launching the heads of the soldiers that went with Faramir back into the city as a scare tactic. And Gandalf,
give that to Peter Jackson. That's something that would really happen.
Oh, I believe
it was not unheard of during sieges to take dead bodies of the fallen, your enemy, and do something like that. It would not be uncommon for taking their own dead and catapulting them into the city, because guess what? It's very unhealthy. A dead body is unhealthy. So let's just say, even if you never launched an attack on the city, just general people do die, diseases and up. But let's say you lost 100 people. Again, you never attacked the city yet. You're just slaying siege.
Yes.
They take that 100 dead bodies, and rather than bury it, hey, it's a weapon. German warfare. So they'll catapult them bodies into the city, and now that dead body is spreading disease, and it another worry that a defender of a city has to worry about. Now, the defender of the city has two options: bury that dead body or dispose of it, or catapult it back out there.
Right.
So now you're playing body tag, and that did happen.
Real quick, I'm sending you I'm sending you, Phil, a link in the private chat, and I sent it in the public chat too for everyone else. So everyone's probably heard of the YouTube channel Shadiversity. So for those that don't know, they're a channel that focuses on medieval history and what that was actually like back in the day and how we get some of our different fantasy tropes from that sort of thing. And he did a video that I remember seeing a few years back about medieval sieges. And so I put that here in the chat. And of course, Phil, I sent it to you. But the reason I bring it up is because he kind of touches on something that we see just after this. Because after this, the orcs officially launch their attack on Minas Tirith, and of course, the soldiers of Gondor are defending it. But one of the things that we see the orcs using that I thought was really, really cool was siege towers. So before we go any further with that, Phil, would you mind to give a little bit of insight on what siege towers would really have been like?
Well, it wouldn't have been much different to what you had seen in the movie. And that was used since ancient times. The purpose of a siege tower is to get your troops to the tower wall of a city. Okay. Sometimes you want the tower to be higher, or it can be slightly leveled with the wall of the city. Okay. If you have a siege tower that is a little bit higher, then you can put archers on the top. Now, instead of the defenders of a city having the advantage of height, your archers have the advantage of height. And what they would do is they would bring it to a section of the wall, and the archers on top would try to clear that wall, and then they'll drop a plank. All right. And that plank would land right there on top of the city wall, and troops will come and go across it and fight the troops that are on top of the city wall. So that's one point of a siege tower. Another siege tower could have 3 points, and that will have archers on top, soldiers with the trapdoor that lands on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And at the base of the siege tower would be people that are either trying to dig or destroy the wall itself.
Now,
So
question. How would these siege towers be moving? Because
people,
obviously,
majority of the time, you would have people pushing that siege tower to the wall. Now, in other cases, you wouldn't want horses to do the job because horses will be easily killed,
mm-hmm.
and they're too valuable because you need them for your cavalry.
And I
So,
suppose that rules out things like oxen too, right?
no, but you would probably use oxen and cattle behind the tower to push it. But ideally, you would have people. People would actually literally pull or push the tower into place. So, and it all could be tricky because, like I said, the people in the siege tower will douse the tower with water. That way, the defenders can't shoot it with flaming arrows. They would try so that it doesn't burn as easy. They would probably use some form of animal hide. Doesn't mean it still won't burn. It just would be a lot harder to burn. A great movie to see siege towers working is Kingdom of Heaven, when the Muslims are attacking Jerusalem. That is a perfect way to see how siege towers work and how difficult it was for an attacker to take the city. When you're the defender, you're benefiting being in defense in that situation. But even in the movie, you see, when the siege towers are moving and everything, what are the people of the army of Gondor throwing out there? The actual broken pieces of buildings.
And it proves to be very effective too. They crush quite a few of the different platoons, including nearly crushing their leader.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of accurate. think of catapults almost as the form of modern ancient artillery. Uh, Catapults can do some serious damage. Also, they can also use catapults in conjunction with the siege towers because if a bunch of catapults were aimed at a certain direction of a city wall, they could try to hammer it to fall down.
Yes.
So that's another thing.
And if I'm not mistaken, siege towers were also very, very susceptible to fire. Right?
Yes, that's why you see some places, some of the armies would use animal hide. Some animal hides were better than others, but again, it's not that it won't catch on fire. It just wouldn't happen as easy if it was just nothing but wood.
Right. And so, real quick, I just want to mention something real quick. This is kind of off topic from where we are in the story, but it's still Lord of the Rings related. So, for those that don't know, there were, of course, video game tie-ins to these movies. There was 2 of them specifically that I want to talk about. There was Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers that covered the events of the Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers from, of course, the point of view of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And then there was Return of the King, which was basically the same game, but expanded gameplay and more characters you could play as that covered the events of Return of the King. So you can play as Gandalf basically during the Battle of Minas Tirith, like within the city. And I distinctly remember one of the levels that you play as Gandalf in, where you are fighting on top of the wall, and one of the things you have to do is you have to command the catapult brigade to fire these basically burning hunks of rock at the siege towers as they come in, or you had to shoot your magic because you're playing Gandalf. You had to shoot your magic at them yourself to get them to knock down. So, real quick, if you're into retro gaming and you have a PS2 or a GameCube and you find those games, I highly, highly recommend them. But anyways, the fight keeps going. While this is going on, we see Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli making their ways through the tunnels, and Legolas is somehow able to both see and hear the voices of the dead. Is that accurate?
He's an elf. What he can see and what he can hear is highly more than a human. I would say think like a dog or a cat. That's his type of hearing and what his type of vision is. So he's able to. Elves have unique abilities that men in Middle Earth do not.
So they keep going, and there's this one scene that I know was a deleted scene that they added back in, where they're walking through this foggy area. And funny enough, this is another thing that they included in the game, although different. So real quick, comparing this to the game, you're going to hear me do this a lot, by the way, throughout this section of the movie. You do indeed play as... So, tell you what, I'll show you. So the way that the game works, Return of the King, is you have 3 different branches of the story. One where you follow Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, one where you follow Gandalf, and one where you follow Sam. And so the way that it works is during the branch, I'm going to bring up this picture here. During the branch where you're playing as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, that's the one where you play through the Paths of the Dead and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. So have a look at this picture here. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay, so you see this very nice looking level selection menu on the wall of course, the White Tower. And you see you have 3 different branches that, of course, converge at the top. So on the left, those are the levels you play as Gandalf. In the middle, those are the ones you play as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and on the right, those are the ones you play as Sam. And so, pretty much this one here at the bottom, that's the one where you're playing as the Paths of the Dead. And what you're doing in that game is you are basically fighting against the dead soldiers, which obviously doesn't happen here. But you do go through that foggy section like twice. In fact, I'm probably gonna have to stream this game at some point because I love this game. So, bringing it back to the movie, the foggy section is different though in the movie because there's a scene where Aragorn's like, "Don't look down," but Gimli, of course, does because he's the comic relief. Excuse me, and he sees that they're all walking on human bones. But then, of course, they come to the central chamber, and they, of course, are confronted by the King of the Dead. Now, let me ask you this, Phil. Did this king ever actually have a name, or is he just the King of the Dead?
Tolkien gives him a name because he was a real person.
Okay.
I don't know his name on the top of my head, but yes, he does have a name.
Well, tell you what, let's look this up real quick. Who was the King of the Dead in Return of the King?
Undead.
Okay. So this is according to the one wiki to rule them all. The King of the Dead, originally called King of the Mountains, was the king of the dead men of Dunharrow in Dwemerberg. Before that had been a living man. Let's see. Scroll down a little bit. Yeah, it doesn't say in here. It just says in the later years of the Second Age, he and his men also served and worshipped Sauron until he and his people swore allegiance to the realm of Gondor upon the Stone of Eric. Isildur was king of Gondor at the time. The King of the Dead made an oath to fight on Isildur's side when needed, but when that moment of need came, he didn't come. And so we know all of that.
His name is... I'm not even going to say. I'm going to just spell it Rioc.
Riok. We'll try that.
That is the name.
I didn't know that he and his men initially sided with Sauron. But anyways, Aragorn says that he is here to call them to uphold their oath. And at first, they're just laughing at him. They're going to try and kill them. Legolas here. Okay, so here's something that still confuses me. So obviously, Legolas tries to shoot an arrow through the King of the Dead, but it just goes right through him because he's a ghost. But when the King of the Dead swings his sword at Aragorn, Aragorn's able to not only block it with his own sword, but grab the guy by the throat and actually hold on to him. How does that work?
I don't know. That's not in the book. Let's just say that maybe because he is the blood heir to the king, he has that power. That's all I can say. But that's not in the book. He doesn't know.
But anyways, Aragorn, of course, calls them to fulfill their oath and fight for them. But seemingly the army of the dead just isn't having it because they vanish on them laughing. And then suddenly the cave starts to come down on them. And I very much remember this part of the game. But what happens is they have to escape while all of these skulls are raining down on them. And by the time they get out, they see the Black Corsairs. And this is treated... Okay, so here's another thing I didn't get. Aragorn knew about the Black Corsairs because Elrond told him. And yet, he is shown to like fall to his knees in sadness at the sight of them. So what's going on with that?
Because he's in despair. He didn't get the help that he thought he was going to get from the undead. And in the movie, this is his way of not having any hope to stop him, which
Oh,
is not in the book.
okay.
The way it's done in the book is totally different than what you see in the movie. So
Okay.
movie version, you can talk about that part, but then I'll give you the book version, which is totally different than what we got.
Well, there's really not much more for now to say about that scene other than seeing the King of the Dead appear before them saying, "Okay, we're going to fight for you." So what actually happens in the book?
In the book, it's they go to the town that you see there on the coast. It's being attacked.
Mhm.
Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and some of the men that are from the Dunedain from the north had come down. They have taken
Okay.
ships and come down. So they all meet at a battle of this town. I don't remember the name of this coastal town, but it's in Gondor. So they actually have a battle. And what leads to a victory was because Aragorn had the army of the undead.
Mhm.
Now, he defeats the Corsairs, which are really the men from the south, Haldor, whatever you want to call the name of that place.
Yeah.
And right after they defeated them, Aragorn tells them they fulfilled their oath and they can go. So the army of the undead never makes it to the Pelennor Fields, nor were they supposed to go to the Pelennor Fields.
Mhm.
The only reason he really went there to get the help from them was to defeat the Corsairs at this city that's on the coast.
Okay.
And after they defeat them, some of the men from that city, along with the men that came, the Dunedain from the north, and Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas, take the ships and go sailing up the river up towards Minas Tirith.
Okay.
Okay, so there's the difference right there. The army of the undead never makes it to the Pelennor Fields at all in the book. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have a big important role to play because they stopped the Corsairs from winning the battle of the coast. Had they won the battle of the coast, they would have kept going all the way up to Minas Tirith.
Right.
So, in a sense, the army of the undead did the job they were supposed to do. But
Mhm.
unlike the book, like I said, unlike the movie, again, Aragorn does not take them to the Pelennor Fields, but releases them then and there. And there's many
Okay.
speculations on why he did that. And I'm talking
Right.
book. One, he knows that the Witch King and the Nazgul are there. All right. And you don't know, and he doesn't know what type of effect that would have on the army of the undead.
Mhm.
Might be a disaster. They might switch, not because they want to, but because the power of the Witch King, and not speaking about the power of Sauron. And originally, these people, the undead, the ones that broke the oath to Isildur, originally were worshippers of Sauron. So will they switch their allegiance when they get to the Pelennor Fields? I'm pretty sure Aragorn already knew at the moment he went there that these people, as far as trust, he can't trust them. But he
Right.
can trust them enough to do the job he needed them to do. And that was to win that battle at that coastal town. And they did. So there's the big difference. No green who dead army magically appears and starts wiping out everybody. That does not happen. Uh, as people that like Tolkien and everything, that kind of cheapen the Rohirrim and what they're
Right.
doing. So yeah, a
S-
lot of people I don't mind the scene where they bring him the undead into the movie, into Pelennor Fields, because there's already been a lot of changes. You have to separate movie from book, all right?
Right.
But I, as a Tolkienist and a fan of Tolkien, didn't like that part. I really didn't. I wish that Peter Jackson would have stuck with how Tolkien had put it down, that the Dunedain, even though they were not numerous, they had come down, and the men from that city and from around the area there joined not Gandalf, Aragorn in going to Minas Tirith.
Right.
So that seems more realistic, and for me, I think it would have been better. But that's second guessing. But that's all.
So while this is going on, we go back to the scene of the battle at Minas Tirith, and the walls are absolutely overrun. Gandalf, of course, is involved in the fight. Pippin's trying to run to safety, but of course, he ends up getting involved in the fight too. And we get that scene of go back to the Citadel, Pippin. This is no place for a hobbit, but Pippin ends up saving Gandalf's life. So while this is going on, and I might be going a bit out of order here, but that's okay. While this is going on, we see Frodo and Gollum reaching the very top of the long staircase, and they find themselves at the mouth of a tunnel. And Frodo doesn't want to, but he goes in with Gollum, and Gollum instantly gets him lost. Like, he runs ahead, Frodo cannot keep up, and it's a trap, basically. So Frodo eventually finds himself in the middle of a web. He pulls out, he has a memory of back in Lothlorien when he was getting his gift from Gladriel, and he pulls out the file of Gladriel and turns it on for the first time.
That is not the file of Gladriel.
I thought it was.
That is the file of Elendil.
Oh, okay, never mind. So full disclosure, I was getting my information a little bit mixed up with the Rankin Bast version of Return of the King, which I do recommend watching that, by the way, just to see how ridiculous it is. But anyways, he turns on the file of I can't Elendil. That's the best I can do with that. And immediately we see Shelob. Now, shoot on Shelob, Phil. What is she? We know that she is a descendant of Ungoliants, but what's her story?
Well, like you said, she's a spider, a beast. Not as powerful as her mother was. Her mother is the one that killed the two trees. Don't forget, wounded Morgoth because she wanted to eat the Silmarillions and he wouldn't let her.
Yeah.
So she has found a place in Mordor to live. All right. And she lives in this cave. Gollum eventually finds her and makes a pact with her. Now, this is all before the Lord of the Rings and even any of this had happened. And his deal is, if he's in the area, he would bring something to her, living, be it a orc or a human or whatever, and lead it up to her lair, get them trapped in the web, and she can, beat on them, kill them eventually. And whatever they drop or leave behind, it's his for the taking. So in his mind, this was all planned so he could get the ring. She will eat Frodo and whatever, and he would get his ring back. Because
Right.
you have to remember he has flopped back from going from Gollum to Smeagol, and then after what happened with Faramir and everything, he has mentally gone back to being Gollum again.
Yes. Now,
And his thing is he wants that ring, and this is
bef-
the way means of getting it.
so before we go further with that, another important question that needs to be asked is Shelob directly affiliated with Sauron, or is she just does her own thing, basically?
This ain't a video game. No, that's totally
Yeah,
out there.
and she's not a shape shifting
No,
thing that can turn into a woman.
no.
That's false.
She is there on her own will. I doubt highly, since her mom got into the big scuffle with Morgoth, that she would be friendly with his chief lieutenant Sauron. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't think they have anything to do with each other. And if Sauron knows that she's there, he's smart enough to leave her alone. And pretty much she's smart enough to leave him alone.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this one. Do you think, and by the way, DJ Ronnie G says, cool link video, his Siege videos are better than his AI art. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that one, DJ. That's a topic that's for a different time. But anyways, do you think Shelob cared about the fact that Frodo had the ring, or do you think that?
I don't think she has any idea about the ring. Much like her mother, she's only concerned about one thing: eating.
Just eating?
That's it.
And do you think that if left alone, she would eventually suffer the same fate as Ungoliant of basically eating herself to death?
I don't know, because it hasn't happened. It didn't happen all that time. Why would it happen now? I think pretty much, if you want an explanation, I think what would have happened if she ate Frodo, and what would be her situation would have been she would have ate Frodo, not cared about the ring, not one way or the other. Personally, I
Mhm.
don't think even if she knew what it was, I don't think she would have cared for it. Doesn't concern her.
Right.
So the ring would have been there for Gollum to come and take. Uh, as far as the same fate as her mom, I don't see her that way, because she didn't go practically hunting orcs to eat.
Mhm.
She, like I said, she made a deal with Gollum to bring her stuff when he was in the area. Now, I
Right.
don't want to say that probably she didn't know how to hunt. I'm pretty sure she did.
Mhm.
But I don't see her like her mom, where she constantly had a desire to feed. But that could have been because she ate the two trees, and that did something to her to cause her to want to feed more. Where
Right.
Gillian never ate anything close to what resembled the two trees. So now I think she's just typical big version of a spider. Just, you know, eats what she can eat, what's in there, and whatever Gollum brings her. Other than that, nothing else. Like I said, if Sauron, which I don't think he's stupid, he probably knows she's there. I think his thing is just leave her alone and leave her be. And if Ungoliant has any type of sense, her probably way of thinking is the same thing. Uh, Sauron's over there. I'm here. I leave him alone. He leaves me alone.
Okay. And then like the last question that I have before we move on in the story is, what's the difference between Shelob and, say, the spiders of Mirkwood?
Well, the spiders of Mirkwood, could you say, were in some form maybe her sisters or brothers or of her mom, from her
Mhm.
mom. More than likely, more than likely. But you know, the only similarities I would say they probably had is the ability to think, like you see in The Hobbit. They weren't stupid. They had some intelligence. They're not typical bugs. So I think they had some intelligence. Now I can't say what Tolkien would think about it, but yeah, I would say that they had some intelligence. I would lean that they're in a gray area, but what you see in the Hobbit, you know, trilogy, and you see him in Mirkwood, and you see what happens when what's his name puts a ring on, and you can hear him talking.
Yes.
I think that if Tolkien would have seen that, he probably would have agreed with that kind of train of thought.
Okay. So with that, Frodo makes the best effort that he possibly can to get away from Shelob, although he ends up getting caught in a web, and Gollum's watching the whole time, taunting him, and this gives Frodo the extra bit of strength to cut through the webs and get away, but he loses Sting in the web in the process. And by the time he gets out, Gollum jumps him and tries to take the ring. But the moment that Frodo gets the upper hand, Gollum immediately turns face and is like, "No, don't blame me. The ring made me do it." And Frodo tries to be merciful to him and say, "I have to destroy this ring for both of us." But that just enrages Gollum even further. And he falls down the cliff. And in the exhaustion, um, Frodo falls and hallucinates a vision of Galadriel, giving him extra strength. Is that accurate to the book?
Nope.
Okay.
That was all Frodo. That is all Frodo. Like I said, I don't remember ever reading that she had that ability to speak to him from all the way back in Lothlorien, or have the power to pick him up where he was at and put him on his feet, like it shows in the movie.
I mean, you could be charitable and say that was him that was all in his head.
No, if
Like
it's
that
the
was just
way he
remembering.
jumped up, it seemed like he was pulled up. That wasn't just I'm going to get up. That was a pull up. You even see him jump a little bit. So, no. Everything that happened there between Gollum and Smeagol and everything that's going on there had no interference from Galadriel. No. Besides him having the light of Elendil, and there's a reason that light is very important, because that light is from, if you remember, we discussed this, Elrond's dad. He was him and his wife, his mom, Elrond's mom, had one of the Silmarils. All right. And when he went to Valinor to get the help of the Valinor against Morgoth, he was rewarded, but also, you could say, a punishment, because no mortal man is supposed to ever step foot on Valinor. Now, there has been one exception before him, but for him, since he's still technically a man, the Valinor takes his boat out from being in the water and puts it in the sky.
Which that's the guy that had the Silmaril embedded in his head, right?
Right. After that, he wears it as a headband. and he travels the night sky. That's why he is the star of the elves. That's what that's what they call it. And that light that they got is, how can I put it? In a sense, water that has been touched by that Samael. So that's why it has the light of the Samael. Now,
Okay.
Oregon and her mom, her mom destroyed the trees. The Samaels has the light of the trees. And the reason she ate the tree was Morgoth wanted her to kill the trees, was to put out the light. That's
Mhm.
why when you see Sam holding the light, even though it wasn't her, she still, like her mom, fears that light. That's
We
like a
even see
divine light.
Frodo hold it up to her a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
and she
So,
like recoils at it.
yeah, because that's the light of the Valinor.
Mhm.
So that's why, yeah, like I said, it's a wonderful gift that he got from Gladriel. So, but yeah, that light is very important. That's probably, I would say, for the forces of good, a stronger, more powerful than the ring of for Sauron for the forces of evil. You
Okay.
know, I mean, it's just as powerful, if not more powerful.
Right.
So uh, but like I said, I'm not knocking on any of the changes that Peter Jackson made, but he did some 360s and some things that are out of there. But I can understand movie wise why he wanted to put Gladriel in that part to make it seem from afar she was aiding him. But in
Right.
reality, book wise, everything that happened, that was Frodo on Frodo, by Frodo, for Frodo.
Right.
So
So with that, then, while this is going on, of course, we still see the battle going on. It's nighttime now. They can't the orcs, of course, can't get the gate open. So who do they call in? But the most feared battering ram ever, Grond. And I know Grond's got some lore to him, right? Phil?
yeah, I originally think that he used that at, even though it was a couple hundred, if not thousands of years, that was originally used at the siege of Minas Morgul
Hmm.
for them to take that city. So it has been used in battle before. So, and for the orgs, that's like not an ultimate weapon, but a super weapon, because that is, let's just put it this way, the gates to Minas Tirith aren't something that is weak. There's some pretty strong gates holding that, locking that city in.
Right.
So, and you have to remember another thing, there's symbolism with Grog. Do you
Hmm.
know what the symbolism is, what that wolf means?
No.
What was one of the forms that Sauron took in earlier times, especially mentioned in the Silmarillion?
A wolf?
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
So, in a way, that is a symbol of Sauron, you know. And people, you have to remember, in Minas Tirith and elsewhere, are not blind, stupid, or don't know their history. And seeing that is also bringing even more fear.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, a lot of symbolism in Lord of the Rings. So,
So eventually, of course, they use Grond to completely bust in the gates of Minas Tirith, and it's pretty much a bloodbath at like the lowermost level. Gandalf, of course, is there and he helps the best that he can, but the city is completely overrun. So,
no, not necessarily. That's
well, okay, the lower levels
lower
specifically.
level.
Also, I know we kind of touched on it, but I'll talk about it again. Not much really happens here, but this is where about the time where the Rohan armies are taking a break from their riding. Merry and Pippin have a conversation about keeping hope. Really not much to say with that one. But while all of this is going on, we see Denethor carrying a torch, and his men are behind him, and they're carrying the body of Faramir, who is still alive, by the way. Pippin notices this and decides to follow them from a distance. And while they're heading to the mausoleum, Denethor is talking about how Gondor is lost. He has no heirs, and so not only is he about to cremate Faramir, but he's about to cremate himself. So why would Denethor do this?
Well, his whole purpose in being was to pass something on, especially to Boromir.
Mm-hmm.
Now he has nobody to pass it on to. And he feels, again, he has the doom in his head. He's going to eventually be killed one way or the other. Gondor, yes. Minas Tirith is going to fall. Well, he might as well do it the way he wants to do it, not by any other hand. So it wouldn't matter if he knew that Faramir was alive. He's determined to take his way out, and he wants to take his son with him. So there's nothing more else to say to that. He just was determined to go, and his son is going with him for the ride. You know, I'm not trying to make it like be funny about it, but in his eyes, there's no point. Again, this is what happened when he kept looking into the Palantir. And the Palantir is going to show you something, maybe what you want to see, but it doesn't give you the explanation.
Mm-hmm.
What turned out what he was seeing wasn't men from the south coming to defeat Minas Tirith. What he sees, but he can't see. But what we know is that is Aragorn leading them ships. That is men from the north, from the Dunai Rangers. There are men from Gondor, and Legolas and Gimli. But again, he doesn't notice. Again, it's like I told you before. We go into the future, I take a picture, and I show you the picture. You don't have no idea what that picture is. Okay?
Right.
You don't know what's going on, anything. There's no context to that. Well, when he's looking at Palantir, he does not have any context other than he sees the black ships. That's it. So logically, he's already in the doom fate. That's why Gandalf gets mad, because he said, "Where's Gondor's armies?" Remember, he has what he has assembled there in Minas Tirith, but he hasn't called on his brother-in-law, the Prince of Doloth. He hasn't called the west of Gondor to come. He hasn't called the people south of Gondor to come. And he really doesn't have anything to do with lighting the beacons to summon the Rohan.
Right.
That's Gandalf. So really, he's sitting on his thing, just waiting for the end.
Which is honestly pretty cowardly.
Yeah, well, like I said, if someone tells you, "Hey, it's over," you normally have two options. You can sit there waiting to die, or you can decide to do it yourself. They're the only two
or
options.
option 3, go out fighting.
Well, that's still the first option.
True.
Right. So, like I said, there's only two. You can do one or the other, and he's choosing that's the way he's going to go out. He already determined that's the way his son's going to go out. Like I said, even if he acknowledges or doesn't acknowledge that Faramir's still alive, doesn't matter. He wants to end it all. So sad, but that's how it is.
So while all of this, of course, is going on, we go back to Frodo, who has made it back to his feet, and he is stumbling to the best that he can toward the Tower of Cirith Ungol. And of course, Sam, by this point, has found the discarded lembas bread that Gollum had thrown away to frame him, and he's heading back up the stairs by this point. But anyways, Frodo is making his way to the best that he can toward Cirith Ungol, unaware that Shelob is stalking him until it's too late, and Shelob stings him. Now, obviously, in real life, spiders don't have a stinger in their abdomen. That's bees, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, but somehow Shelob does have one, and Frodo is basically paralyzed and knocked out. And the moment that he drops dead, or we think dead, Shelob scoops him up and starts wrapping him up in webbing, only for Sam to show up with Sting in his hand and the file. And we have a fight between Sam and Shelob, during which Sam is able to get 2 good strikes in. He first stabs Shelob in one of her eyes, and then once he gets underneath of her, he manages to get a shot into basically center mass on her from underneath. Now, Shelob doesn't die, but she is sent into retreat, and she is badly wounded. Do we know, by the way, in the books, whatever happens to Shelob after this?
I would say no, because Tolkien leaves it blank. So you can imply that either she dies or she leaves that area. So, but we forgot that Sam also cuts her stinger.
We don't see that in the movie.
Yes, he does. He does cut the stinger.
Huh.
She tries to stab him with the stinger, and she takes the ironically Sting, and he takes the stinger. Without the stinger, she can't sting him and paralyze him.
Okay.
And if you notice, she keeps trying to do that, but thanks to his strong hobbit feet, he can keep her from aiming that stinger down at him. So
right, and so eventually, of course, like we said, he does send her into retreat, and she runs off to go back into her hole. So after this, Sam goes to where Frodo is and, of course, uncovers his face from the webbing, and he thinks he's dead. Until he sees that Sting is starting to glow blue, and he sees that orcs are approaching. And so he goes into hiding, and the orcs find Sam, and Sam overhears them talking about how Frodo is actually still alive, that he's not dead, but instead paralyzed and drugged, and that apparently Shelob likes to drink the blood of her victims living, basically just drain them dry.
that's what all spiders do.
So the orcs decide to take Frodo with them, and they head to the Tower of Cirith Ungol. Sam realizes how much of an idiot he is, and that's where we're going to stop for the night. So, like I said, a lot of exciting. We're definitely getting to the most exciting part of the movie. Would you say?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yes. And just as a side note, I was talking a lot about that Return of the King game. I am for sure going to be streaming both of those games at some point. Probably we'll be doing that a little bit once we finish Return of the King. Before we get into The Hobbit, I'll stream those games for you guys. They're definitely worth a check out if you haven't played them. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and end it for the night. So, a couple things to know before we get off of here. So this is a week where pretty much 5 days of the week are going to have a stream. So tonight was Return of the King. Tomorrow is going to be beginner series with myself, Trevor, and Dan, and we're going to talk Castlevania. And then Wednesday, we're having yet another beginner series, and my special guest, Kobe, he is going to be walking us through, I'm told to say it this way, he's going to be walking us through Ruby, aka RWBY. Thursday, we're going to have round 2 of our Smash Brothers tournament, and then Friday will be our open panel discussion, and the topic of that one will be how world history affects our entertainment. Kind of a part 2 to the last beginner series that I did with Phil and Nate, where we talked about world history. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Thank you, of course, Phil, for coming on here with me. Phil?
Bear with me. Thank you for letting me be here, and I enjoyed myself. And I just want to say one more thing. DJ, nerd.
Are you going to take that line down, DJ? But anyways, we're going to go ahead and get out of here now. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And just remember, the Force is family. See you guys later.